Here's the good news. For 99.9% of people, their cruise goes off without a hitch. But when something does go wrong, it can be a disaster. That's because on a cruise, you can't easily pack up and go home, and being hundreds of miles out to sea makes dealing with any situation a little tougher. That's why, to prepare you for what could happen, I've pinpointed some avoidable disasters that you should know about and how to prevent them in the first place. These are things that you'll want to avoid to keep them from throwing a major wrench into your perfect vacation. Before you ever step foot on a cruise ship, you first need to check in. These days, most of it can be done online ahead of time, making the process so much faster. Even so, you still need to show your documents before you can board. And these days, there is more to show than ever before. Of course, you need to show your passport or your birth certificate, so ensure that you have these documents with you. But now, if your cruise requires testing, then you'll have to show a negative COVID test result before boarding. And with vaccine requirements, you now need to show your card or proof of the shot as well. In other words, there's never been more for you to remember to bring to the port, and without these documents, it could mean that you don't get to sail. To remember everything, I like to paperclip things like my vaccine card to the back flap of my passport so it's all in one place. And just in case you do forget something, I also like to take pictures of the documents on my phone as well. If you have to physically produce these docs, a picture may not work, but some lines do let you show pictures of things like the vaccine card in order to board. The fastest way to ruin a cruise? Be slow back to the cruise ship. Every port you visit, the time for all aboard is posted in the gangways you leave, in the ship's daily planner, announced over the intercom, and any crew member will also know what time all passengers need to be back. Even so, there are times where people, whether through their own fault or just circumstances, they get back to the ship too late. Let's just say at the all aboard times, they are not suggestions. With a schedule to keep, cruise ships will leave passengers that arrive back too late. Just search on YouTube for videos of pier runners for proof. To prevent this, there are a few things that you can do. First, grab a cheap wristwatch to carry with you. You can also use your phone, but just be sure that it is set to the ship's time. When it's time to head back, I always like to leave plenty of time to make my way back to the ship, just in case. As well, if you book an excursion through the cruise line, the good news is that they normally have guarantees that the ship will wait for passengers on these excursions, even if they are delayed in getting back. Anything related to the stomach is just awful. It seems like you could power through a cold or a headache, but if your stomach feels even slightly off, it lays you out for the count. That's why many people are worried about seasickness on a cruise. If you're feeling even a whiff of seasickness, it can make the trip into a nightmare. The good news is that modern cruise ships, they are surprisingly stable. Now, you might feel some movement, but if you think that you're going to be rocking and rolling the entire cruise, that's simply not the case. As well, ships do what they can to stay in calmer waters so that everyone has a better time. The better news is that there are tons of over-the-counter remedies, from patches to pills, that you can bring with you on your cruise. And even if you forget them, they are sold on the ship and have to be found for free at guest services. If you're worried about seasickness, don't be. But it is also smart to be prepared. Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room: COVID and cruising. Getting it is bad enough anytime, but getting it on the cruise ship, that can be a disaster for your vacation. The protocols, they call for passengers who come down with cases while at sea to be quarantined away from others to keep the spread low. That possibly means having to move to another room and isolate from others on the ship. There have been a number of stories from passengers who've had to do this, essentially spending at least a portion of their cruise stuck in a cabin instead of being out and about having fun. Now, according to the cruise lines, the number of passenger cases on board cruise ships is fairly low, but safe to say, if there are cases on land, then there can be cases on the cruise ship. That's why it's smart to use some easy precautions. Wearing a mask indoors, it's not anybody's favorite, but it is also a good idea. It's also smart to be cognizant of being in close proximity of people that you aren't traveling with. Sometimes, however, that's just impossible on a cruise ship. Other things that you can do: you can stick to shorter cruises if you're worried about getting sick. With a shorter cruise, there's less time spent in close contact with others. And if you do happen to come down with something, it is a shorter time until the ship is back home in port. There's not much that is better than that first day at sea when the sun is shining, you're on vacation finally, you're getting some sun and having a drink or two. There's not much that's worse than staying out too long and being burnt to a crisp. I call the day after the first day at sea Lobster Day. It's when you see all those poor folks walking around the ship like cooked lobsters after spending too much time by the pool the day before. The worst part of it all may be that since it tends to happen early on in a cruise, you're dealing with a sunburn for several days, making you miserable. The good news is that it is all totally preventable. Now you know all the things that you should do: sunscreen, hat, and limit your time in the sun. It's not hard to avoid being sunburned, but you just need to remember to keep it in mind. There's no doubt that attitudes toward things like marijuana have changed in recent years. In fact, in most states, it is now legal for medicinal purposes, and many have declared it fully legal for recreational purposes as well. On a cruise ship, however, pot can be a major headache for your vacation. That's because federally, the drug is still illegal, and cruise lines follow federal law in this area. This goes even if you are sailing from a state where it is legal, and it applies to all sorts of substances, including gummies, oils, CBD, and more. If it's even remotely associated with marijuana, it's likely not allowed on the ship. This isn't just due to laws in the US, however. Remember that ships sail to foreign countries, which will have their own set of laws. To keep everyone happy and make things simple, the cruise lines just don't let it on board in the first place. If caught, you could be referred to the authorities and/or have it confiscated. On a cruise ship, you do not have to go far to get a drink. Bars are everywhere, and no matter if you like beer, wine, or those fruity cocktails with umbrellas, it's all there. And with people on vacation, the drinks flow easily. Now, prices are high, so many people opt to buy drink packages instead. You pay a set daily price and you get whatever you want. Of course, here, many people want to make sure that they get their money's worth each day. So add up vacation mode, drink packages, and bars everywhere around the ship. Yes, some people can overdo it. That mistake can make your next day a disaster, where instead of enjoying the cruise, you're really just trying to nurse a hangover. My advice: it may seem like you're on a cruise for only a short time and you've got to pack it all in, but there is plenty of time to get your fill while on vacation. So there's no reason to overdo it and then make the following day a bad one. Thank you for watching, and I'm sure that your cruise is going to go off without a hitch, but I hope that you have some better idea of some avoidable mistakes that some people do make while on their trip. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe and comment in the comments below, and you can always find more at Cruzely.com. Until next time, happy sailing.